Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, you live in the West, you want to make money, you'd like to get rich, and you're bombarded with interest all up in your face. Um, what I would say to that is that avoiding riba is not enough. You need a replacement system. So, for us Muslims, obviously, interest is equivalent to declaring war on Allah and His Messenger. So that it's obviously something that we can't go anywhere near. And because of that, we need to find some other way to preserve our money from inflation. Obviously, our wealth is depreciating. So, to that, I've devised a halal wealth stack. And, excuse my pet. Uh, what I would say is that income comes in, and then it goes in through a cash layer, and then an investment layer, and then an optimization layer, which is last. So whenever you make your paycheck comes in and hits your account, immediately it should be going into a cash management system, which is essentially at least the best ones on the market that I found, UIF and Wahid. So UIF, the way that I've been using it is as a deposit account. It's only between a checking and savings account, but they pay out about 3.74%, which is pretty good. It's almost on high level, at least for like the 4.5% average that you see around. Um, the banker or employee that I mainly have interacted with, her name is Deema Berhan. Um, if you end up joining or making an account, if you could, you know, mention her name, maybe she'll get a little kickback or something. Essentially, this will be paying out monthly profit sharing, which is different to interest because there is actual risk involved. So the whole principle of interest not being allowed is because the person that's giving the loan is going to be guaranteed a profit regardless. And so guaranteed profit um, is different in the sense that it puts them at like an advantage, them being the more wealthy party that gives you the wealth. So it's not equivalent. It doesn't have any risk in it. Um, but with this setup, instead, you only make money if UIF is also making money, and they get their money from giving out vehicle loans and mortgages, halal mortgages. So with that model, it's actually halal. There's fatwas on it if you'd like to read into it. Don't trust me. I'm just some jahil on a screen. And then the second option that I've been putting my money into is Wahid. So they're a pretty big company. I don't know if they're fintech necessarily, but they're on the Nasdaq. They have their own ETF and everything. So what I use them for is as an emergency fund. So the way that their model works is that it's slightly less liquid, but it does have a bigger payout, 4.3%. And that's also a monthly thing. But the only thing is that, at least for UIF, it only increases. But the thing is with Wahid, it could decrease because technically you're just buying almost again like an ETF. It's like a stock, so it has the potential to go down or to go up on like moving basis. However, on average, it does return 4.3%, and it's not as volatile as a normal investment. Um, and if you're going to be making an account with Wahid, I would really appreciate if you use my code and plug myself in right here. Um, and that's just for like you're just straight cash. Like so, if you have money coming in and you just want to use it, checking plus savings right here. Like I would recommend making a separate checking account with like a standard no fee bank. That way you could at least like use it and move it pretty easily. But this deposit account with UIF is like where your paycheck should be going. That way your any cash that's sitting around is not going to be losing automatic value to interest. Otherwise, it just only snowballs from there. And then with the Wirehead, it's going to be called an emergency fund. But if you just have any cash that you like would like to use in a couple months, but you don't plan to, it's a good idea to put it in here as well. That way you could get a slightly higher rate. And then our next layer after your paycheck hits is going to be investment, right? So obviously, if you're not investing, you're falling behind. So for Sharia-compliant investing, there's a couple different options that I recommend and that I can speak about really briefly at least. So aside from just picking individual stocks, the easiest thing to do is just to invest in SBUS, which, as far as I'm aware, when it comes to halal ETFs, it's number one. Um, Last I checked, it was like 10% average yearly, but I mean, I think this year it might be close to like 20%. Although I'm just ballparking here, you could feel free to check. It either matches or beats the actual S&P 500, and it just removes the stocks that aren't halal compliant, meaning like the ones that deal with alcohol, gambling, um, the list goes on. And then after that, we have SPSK, which is a Sukuk ETF. Essentially just like an Islamic bond, usually dealing with like governments and large companies. So you give them money, and then they invest in a project, and then it's a guaranteed return for them just because of like the size that they hold. So then they pass that profit down to you. Again, you could treat this similar to the Wahid account, but it is going to be purchased through a brokerage, so you need to download an app. Personally, I use Robinhood. Again, I'll plug myself here. Link will be in the description, inshallah. If you guys don't have any investment accounts with Robinhood, you could join the link. Me, my little $5 kickback. Um, and then I do recommend, if you are going to pick individual stocks, that you use an app like Musaffa. I prefer them to Zoya just because they don't stick as many ads in my face. But both do work, and they both do have pretty generous free tiers. I have, again, a link. It'll be in the description. I'm not sure if they actually give any rewards. I think it might just be like a 1 year free, like of their pro plan or something. Um, and then after you're done with your whole investing and your whole saving layer, you have your optimization. So ideally, you have like a good like wallet filled with like solid credit cards and all this. Um, Personally, I like to use the US Bank Cash Plus because it is 5% back on two tiers or categories that I personally use for utilities. And then the Robinhood Gold is actually kind of a more like a catch-all, which is 3% back on everything else. So I use this for the bulk of my purchases, and then this I just slap onto my monthly utility bills, so water, gas, electric, Wi-Fi even, and then it all falls under this, and then I'm getting cash back. So it's like a permanent 5% discount. I know a lot of people like look at it and they're like, "Wow, who cares?" But if you're like if you're leaving that on the table, this could be compounding in your stocks portfolio, for example, right? Um, and then I do want to again emphasize that you should never be paying interest on your credit cards. Ideally, you're only spending money that you also have in your bank account, or that you know you're gonna be able to make, before the deadline is due, and that's conditional to actually being able to use credit cards as a Muslim. Again, you don't have to take my word for it. Feel free to look up a fatwa if you'd like to, and you should be trying your best to stay out of credit card debt or any other debt in general. If you do have any, objective is to pay it off in like a snowball method, like paying off the highest interest stuff first, and then going down from there. But that's it for my halal wealth stack system. So I just got done recording, and I realized that I should probably show like a visual of what compounding actually is, because humans can't understand the exponential function and this and that. So looking at like compounding growth comparison, assuming $10,000 initial value, just plotted in Gemini right here. So this is the 3.74% interest that I showed for UIF, right? So after 10 years, after putting in 10,000, you'd end up with 14,000, and then 20,000, and then 30,000. And so obviously the rate of growth keeps increasing because the initial balance also increases. So each time that you add more money to it, the remaining money on top of that's also incurring interest. That's what it is. And then you have 4.3% for the account for Wahid, the everyday Sharia account. And for that, we have 15,000 at year 10, 23,000 at year 20, and then 35,000 by year 30. And then if you have $10,000, again with the 10% interest for the USPS, you'd end up with 26,000 by year 10, 67,000 by year 20, and then the big kicker is 174,000 in year 30. And this is assuming that you just put in 10K, did nothing else, just left it alone for 30 years. And then we have 2.5% inflation, which is the claimed cost of goods. So it would go from 12,800 to 16,386, and then 21,000 just about. And then we have 3% inflation, which is the future cost, blah 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 blah. Again, like a claimed cost of inflation, and this is assuming it's increasing. I don't know why it's actually on the table. Low key, the prompting's pretty bad. Here's what I was trying to show: 2.5% inflation actually causes this level of decrease. So in 30 years, your 10 grand is going to be worth less than half. And then that's like a really it's like a really low estimate. I've been hearing talks about people saying it's closer to 10,000 just because of shrinkflation with the price of goods, and like how bottles will get smaller even though the prices stay the same. So 3% inflation, which is the historical U.S. average, according to the government, year 10 it'd be 7.5K, year 30 it'd be 4,000, which is less than half of the initial 10,000. So clearly, inflation is the enemy. You're trying to keep your wealth. You're working hard for it. Might as well try and keep it. Use these halal wealth methods, investing, savings accounts, all that. Okay. So now, Mark.